Series is going to be a lot of me talking about acne and anorexia and alcoholism and perfectionism and control issues and yada 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 yada. So if that's not your thing, bye-bye. When I woke up, actually, I could feel that cyst on my cheek developing last night, and I've realized something about me. My confidence level is directly tied to what my skin looks like. And I've had years where I've been battling it, trying to get it somewhat better complexion-wise, you know? When my eating disorder ended in 2016, my face just exploded with cystic acne everywhere. Like, just covering my face. Mainly this side, but, or this side. I don't remember. The photographs may have been flipped. Well, regardless, it left some scarring, but that's pretty much faded. But I spent most of my time during that full fucking year just locked up in my bedroom, like only going outside, like to go to the grocery store or whatever, in the black of night, so that I wouldn't have to interact with a lot of people. And in the grocery store, I'd be like one of 10 people total in there, and I would use self-checkout, so I really didn't have to talk to anybody and have them, I just fear this like look on their face when they like feel sorry for me or disgusted by me or whatever, and maybe it's completely in my head, but let me tell you something about things in your head that doesn't make them any less real, no matter how bonkers they may be. I've always been a mega perfectionist. It's one of the reasons I've had so many issues in my life, is that if I don't achieve pure perfection, then I failed, like like in Anchorman, or not Anchorman, sorry, in Talladega Nights, like if you're not first, you're last kind of thing. That's just been my perspective for as long as I can remember, and it's really fucked me up. It's one of the reasons that I dropped out of college. It's one of the reasons that I struggled so much with basketball. No matter how good I was, it wasn't good enough, and then if I didn't have 100% shooting accuracy, I started getting afraid to shoot the ball, and nobody has that, that is an impossible task to be able to have a 100% like accuracy rate. And I like, tanked my high school career or whatever because I had such anxiety about not reaching the tippy top of, like, just not missing, And then I was afraid to apply for scholarships, and I was afraid to apply at any other colleges because, like, I knew that I'd be able to get into Texas A&M because my GPA was, I had a 4.0. If you were in the top 10% or whatever, you had automatic admission into college or state schools. And it's why the reason that I dropped out was that I wasn't making all A's. I wasn't at the tippy top of my class. And I thought that a B or C, just wasn't gonna cut it. I felt like it made my degree meaningless. If I wasn't as good as I was in high school, then what's the fucking point? And I understand that, like, a degree's a degree, and it doesn't state what your GPA is, on the certificate, and I wasn't gonna run for office or anything. It just really wouldn't matter that much, but I have a mental block that prevented me from seeing that. Even, like, with things like just getting tutoring or something, I felt like that's cheating, I just had a very rigid, firm stance on what I needed to have accomplished to actually feel that I earned that degree. And I just couldn't get over it. It was a roadblock that was just insurmountable for me. And one of the reasons that I wasn't excelling in school is stupid. It's essentially the same thing as right now. I'm 35 years old, and I still have the exact same problems I did when I was in high school, when I was in college, when I was post-dropping out of college. They've just haunted me and followed me everywhere. No matter how, like, much I'm able to understand that I'm being silly and that it doesn't make any sense the way my brain works, I can't seem to just push through it. And that's unfortunate. I wasn't failing classes. I eventually would have had failing grades because I just walked out of my finals. I went and I held the door, I had my hand on the handle, and then I balked. I couldn't do it. I literally couldn't go through that door. I just had this immense fear rush over me and this impulse that I just had to get the fuck off of campus. And so I just, A&M's a big campus, you know, and it was just me depressingly head lowered, just kind of slow marching my way to my car, where I just broke down and cried because I knew that I had, like, oh god, I'm gonna cry if I think about it. I just had, like, cemented the reality that I was not going to be in school anymore. And I think, and everyone's told me this, that if I had just gone to talk to a counselor about it, like, and explain the situation, that I was just having a mental breakdown, that they would have probably been understanding. But, you know, professors really do, like, nail the point home that they're not going to allow you any leeway, you know, like, if you don't show up, you fail, you know, like, they're very, very, like, militant about that. And I assumed that that would include me, and I think it would have. I didn't have a psychiatrist. I didn't have a therapist. I went to the psychiatrist one time on campus, and they said I was too difficult a case for them to treat. I had developed anorexia in college. It wasn't as severe as what I had in 2016. 2016, I got to 78 pounds, and when I was in college, I was 88 pounds was my lowest. But I'm 5'5", you know, I mean, I was obviously skin and bones, and every room I walked into, I know that people were looking at me in a way that was like, oh, you know, it wasn't something I could really hide. So that was obviously probably a contributor too. And perfectionism is one of the reasons that started, you know? A lot of people are like, it's not about the weight. I'm like, yeah, it was for me. That's why I started losing weight, was because I had no, like, I gained weight freshman 15 or whatever, you know, because I wasn't playing sports year round, and I didn't like the leg jiggle. And I probably weighed 110, 115 pounds, mind you. I wasn't, like, actually in need of losing weight, but my brain, I didn't look perfect, so I looked terrible. So it started innocently enough, but you kind of learn what your mental health issues are as you go, and you usually learn the hard way, you know, once it's a little too late. And I learned that I had a problem with, like, addiction type stuff or compulsive type stuff, where the way the anorexia worked is that I was on a diet and I just kept restricting, you know, how much I ate. It started off, you know, like, I just ate smaller portions, but every day those portions got smaller and smaller, to the point where I started having, like, a phobia with food, and I narrowed what I ate down to just one thing, like just yogurt or just apples or just tuna fish or whatever. And you're miserable and you're hungry all the time, but perfectionism is what drives that for me. And it was, every time you set a goal weight, the goal weight shifts, like, once you reach it, because you're still not happy and you're still not in a place where you think you look good. I can tell you that even when I got down to, like, 80 pounds, I was still finding aspects of my body that I targeted as being, like, problematic areas, you know? And in retrospect, you realize, like, that's just skin. You can't do anything about, like, skin. It's going to be there. It's not fat. It's just skin. But that's not what you see. You develop some body dysmorphia issues there. Eventually, you know, I realized, like, I'm going to die, like, if this continues, if I just keep losing weight, which is, I restricted every single day, so I didn't eat a healthy amount of calories for, like, a full fucking year, and just 600, 700 calories a day, so there's just no way around it. You're just gonna keep losing until you were nothing. And I was talking about this with my mother yesterday, where I don't remember why I stopped. Like, I stopped after the 2016 election, but I do not think that Trump was the reason for that. I think it just happened to coincide with some other, like, side effects that I was experiencing. Like, you're not eating enough, and you feel like you're going to faint all the time. Like, you can't get up without, you know, having that starry, like, you know, like, stars over your head kind of feeling, or you're just, like, dizzy as shit. You have to, like, stabilize yourself. That's how you feel all the time. You go to bed with your stomach growling every fucking night. It is a miserable fucking way to live. But even with all that, even with the way that you feel, you still have this compulsion to work out to an extreme amount every day. There's no way that you can avoid it. Like, I have gone walking in fucking thunderstorms. Like, well, rather lightning storms, let me rephrase that. But the alternative was nothing. There was no alternative. I had to do it. I used to have to walk the exact same path every day, and I would like spit my gum out or something until I learned that that was bad for birds, particularly. So I stopped doing that. I would always put it out in the woods, but I realized that that was bad. Stopped doing it. Started swallowing it. Not sure which is worse. I'd rather hurt myself than birds. But if I wasn't able to follow that exact path every day, I would have an anxiety attack. Like, I just couldn't do it. It's like, I don't know. I mean, those compulsive things are just really, really stressful. You are not in control anymore at that point. So it's like, even if I was chased by a dog on this street, I'm still going to walk down that street every day because that's my path. I can't do it any other way, or I couldn't. So that was a lot of fun. So I was walking, 10 miles a day or whatever. I even started like jogging a lot of it. It'd be like 100 fucking degrees, and I'm going to go out at the same time every day, which for me was the hottest point of the day. I would be so miserable. I would just collapse when I'd get home and have to just have the fan, right here in my face and chug a lot of water. But that was what I was stuck in. That was the rut. Couldn't deviate it, couldn't alter it, just had to do it. But when I got to such a low weight, my doctor, I was seeing a doctor at this point, and she told me, like, your blood work is not good, and at that point I had started having like real serious chest pain and like heart palpitations and stuff, to where like I started getting pretty scared. I was over 30 years old, and I'm like, Karen Carpenter is just, hovering right here in my head. Like, I do not want to be that. This is not the way that I want to die. I want to be in control of that in some way. Unlike with my alcoholism, the thought of death looming in my near future was actually an incentive to try to stop the cycle of crazy. Hi, Raleigh. Because, like, I was also talking to my mom about this yesterday, that whenever my eyes went bad, I developed optic neuropathy virtually overnight, which is a permanently what is your deal? Permanently blurred central vision. They told me Stop it. Because of vitamin deficiencies that were a combination of my eating issues and the way that alcoholism just renders you incapable of really absorbing the vitamins that you do take in. And they told me that if I continue drinking like that, I may go blind, not just have a vision impairment, but like, that was definitely the strongest addiction that I've had. But the eating disorder was going to be the most immediate cause of death. So anyway, back to the perfectionism thing. Perfectionism is what has led to most of my issues. It's why I couldn't go, can't do a job, because I am totally afraid of the part where you're learning how to do the job. I just can't handle messing up, especially not publicly in front of somebody else. I just feel like such a fucking idiot. And it's why I've quit jobs, because I may have minorly messed up and I couldn't just like own up to it. Everybody messes up, and nobody knows how to do a job at the beginning, but it's too much for me. Like, I would rather run into oncoming traffic than have to face criticism or just the disappointment on someone's face, like when I mess up. Like, I'm not good at being yelled at or talked to in a stern way. I just kind of like break down. I'm a real baby about that, but it's not really something I've ever been able to overcome. And when I was in college, I would call into work if I had a breakout that I thought was something that would like scare customers off. I don't know. I think I've been told in my life that I was like a semi-good looking person, and even if I didn't believe it, like, I knew that other people sort of did, and I thought, like, whenever I had a little extra weight on me, or if my skin was, like, really bad, that would ruin that image in their head, and that they wouldn't think that about me anymore. And I need people to like me in that way. Like, I feel like I don't have much to offer in general, and that's, like, one area that I could perhaps please other people, but I've had to deal with, I would call, and I wouldn't go to class for the same reasons. It's one of the reasons I wasn't doing well in school. My best year in college was when I was anorexic and I lived in the library, because if I went home, I'd be tempted with food. So all I did was study. I made the dean's list that year. So it's like, if I put the work in and if I was doing the reading, then I would be a great student, but I just couldn't do it. I don't know what to tell you. Something really malfunctioned in my brain. And I didn't, unlike so many people who developed these personality disorders like me, I didn't have a tragic or traumatic history. You know, I had a really great upbringing. I have a really supportive family. I had an extraordinarily wonderful childhood. Just once like puberty set in for me, it just, everything's changed. I was really a late bloomer. I was like 16, 17 years old. And I just was never able to get back on track without alcohol. Alcohol really made everything so much easier. If I could take like a pill that gave me the effects of alcohol, like the boosted confidence and even like some of the lowered inhibitions, I would be thriving. Especially if my face cleared up, because like that is a problem. I do know that it's temporary. I've done this acne thing enough to know like that the treatment works for me. It just took like a full year last time, and this has been 6 months, and it's gotten so much better. Like truly, this is the dog, like comparatively, except for this, and it came so fast, which makes me think that it's gonna heal itself pretty fast. It's one of those things, you know, like the Retin-A, when I started you get like a significant skin purging, and it's the same thing with the spironolactone. This dog, I swear to God. I just had to give her a bath because she had poop all over her ass, and yet here she is, like, loving me just as much as ever. I can't handle it. Sorry, I gotta push pause. Perfectionism has also, like, pretty much been is the reason that I don't have friends, and it's the reason, like, a giant aspect of my past relationship was fucked, because I started becoming extremely perfectionist about my body, and I didn't like to be touched anymore because I'm like, she's gonna feel like fat on me, even though I became anorexic when I was still in a relationship with her. And then I started getting paranoid that I wasn't good at sex anymore without alcohol, and really was a terrible combination. That, you know, wasn't the reason that my relationship dissolved, but it was a big part of it. And then the perfectionist part of me, the anxiety aspect with friends, was that I didn't think that I was able to like be interesting in conversations, or that they wouldn't want to hang out with me anymore because of it. And so my shoe came off. And I like really got in my head about it, you know. I just cut everyone out, because this was pre-alcoholic. When I was an alcoholic, I was able to hang out with a lot of people. I like went to parties, and I made decisions that I just would never have if alcohol wasn't in my system, but I don't regret them. I regret the angry part of me that would come out on occasion. I mean, I wasn't typically an angry drunk. I became like a smarmy, sarcastic one, but most of the time I was just laughing, having fun, being like carefree. But sometimes it'd be the really dark, depressive parts where I did most of my self-harming. But anyway, once I got sober and before I was drinking, I really did like cut all my friends out. And that's the reason anxiety and my that I was incapable of achieving this like degree of cool and hot and funny that I'd set for myself, you know. It wasn't perfect, so I just don't want my friends to leave me. So I did it on my own accord. It's sad, really, because I never have, I mean, now I've just forgotten what it's like to have friends, and I really would like to get back in that groove. I talked about this the other day. I feel like now that I do have something, my confidence is what keeps the anxiety at bay. I can't walk into a room without wanting to hide when my face is broken out, and my face has been broken out so much over the years that I went over all this, and I also talked about how I hadn't woken up in a bad mood. What is this bang doing? Get out of here. I hadn't woken up in a bad mood in a long time, but the reason I made this video is that I did make the connection between my face and my confidence. So while I didn't wake up in a bad mood today, the second that I touched my face, because I can feel it, you know, like when I woke up I was like, kind of hurts, and then I did get sad. I got very depressed. I just didn't want to go downstairs and interact with my family, even though, like, obviously they love me even when I have, like, acne. But I feel like they also feel bad for me and wish that it wasn't like this, and that they don't like looking at it either. So it's just easier for me to, like, crawl up in a little ball and just kind of isolate myself. It has nothing to do with them, and I'm not in a bad mood. I'm the exact same fucking person I was yesterday. I'm just embarrassed, and I don't want to have to deal with that. I truly just cannot overcome that. It sounds extremely vain and extremely like narcissistic, and I don't know if the shoe fits, I guess. Although that's really not who I am. It's just what my wonky brain tells me to do, and I am a slave to it. No psychiatrist can fix my face, and no dermatologist really can either. And I have no control there, you know, like the weight stuff I can control. Although I also talked to my mom about this last night, that I'm very cautious about my food intake. Not that like I'm making conscientious choices regarding like the nutritional factor or health factor. I'm very terrible about that. It's gonna catch up to me big time someday. But in how much of it I eat. Like, I'd much rather eat too much, which I do, than too little, which is the direction I immediately go when I start trying to diet just a little bit. I notice that I start cutting my portions almost immediately, and I start ignoring hunger cues and seeing how long I can go without eating anything, and all of a sudden, here I am just eating 600 calories a day. This has happened many times over the past couple of years, but I've been relapse-free since 2016, and I've learned to be okay with the body that I have. I mean, I hate it, but, like, I don't hate it enough to I just don't want to go back to what I was. Anorexia is truly the worst thing in the world. There's no perks other than fitting in, like, a size 00. Like, clothes look good on you, but you don't really look good out of them. Unless, like, truly bones are your thing. And, like, your hair starts falling out, like, your skin looks like shit, like, different kind of shit, but still shit, and you're never happy. So, at least I'm happier like this. Problems still exist and persist, but I don't feel like that, and that's an improvement. So I've at least learned to, like, be halfway okay with the fact that I do have belly fat, and that I do wear a 4 or a 6 or whatever in clothes, and that my tits are way bigger than I wish they were, thanks genetics. But I prefer this to being like I was, and I'm a lot more weirdly confident with it. Like, if I had a girlfriend, I would not be afraid of any of the stuff that I used to be afraid of. Like, I wouldn't shy away from being touched. I wouldn't be afraid to have sex. I would just be different. Everything that I used to be, I'm really a lot better in, but obviously things are still fucked up with me. If I let acne bring me down like this so much, I would never judge anyone else for their skin, and I think that's, you know, the fact that I've lived through that, but I never was that harsh a critic on others. And one of the reasons that I know that people would not extend that same courtesy or acceptance to me is that I read comment sections online sometimes for kicks, and the amount of, like, insults and derogatory comments and just, like, amount of scrutiny that people put on others' bodies and others' any kind of perceived flaw, it's extraordinary how cruel people really are. And what they're typing out is what they really feel and really think, and I carry that knowledge around with me, and it's what drives that fear. You know, I hold myself to, like, celebrity standards, you know, and I fall short. One of the things about anorexia that was good is that I'm like, I can do that. Like, I can be thin, like those people on the movie screen, you know? Like, I can do that. And I did. I fully embraced that. In that regard, the anorexia was fueled by control. I fully admit I have control issues, but it's only because I have such anxieties about things that it's best for me to have some control over the environment and just everything in my world. That's a problem, too. I got a few, but I've whittled it down, you know? I'm not quite what I was. I still have a lot. I mean, I have some, like, normal anxieties, too. Like, every time I go to Houston, I'm 100% sure I'm gonna die in a car crash or road rage incident or just, like, straight gunfire. I'm paranoid about shootings all the time. Every time I walk into, like, a store, which, remember going into stores? I'm absolutely sure this is gonna be the site of, like, a mass shooting. And so I have like things like that, paranoia. But that's like nothing in comparison to what it was. I just wish that my skin was clear. Because I really am a different person when I feel that I'm presenting at least like a B plus aesthetic to the world. And I can't do that without some help in the skin department. Because, yeah, some of it's in my head, but some of it's not. Some of it's real. I have had really bad skin, and this cyst really isn't good, you know, but I know that, and it doesn't happen to everyone. I am 35. I shouldn't really be having to deal with this anymore, and I wish that I knew what the reasoning was behind it, because I would absolutely do anything to stop it. But I have tried a lot of things, you know, even diet, so don't like drinking a lot of water, all that stuff. It's just something in we think it's like strictly hormonal, which is why eventually this shit does work, or it has in the past. And I'm just having to endure it one day at a time. I'm really thankful for masks. And I'm fully aware that, wow, that's your problem? Like, that's so stupid and insignificant. How is that something that's dominating and controlling your life? And all I can say is, fuck you. I've had a lot of problems, and I have struggled through a lot of shit. And I can tell you that the most psychologically damaging is your face, because you can't hide it. It is literally the first thing that people see about you, and probably the thing that they remember the most. It's my billboard, my walking billboard for who I am, you know? Like, that's just, people are gonna judge you instantly on that. And I've had to hide in shame for way too long. I mean, I've had some really, 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 really depressing days. And it's when acne becomes like that it becomes like a true problem, you know? Yeah, the physical scarring is bad, obviously, but it's when it starts psychologically scarring you that they'll put you on Accutane, which, by the way, I've been on Accutane before. I haven't gotten to that point yet, although I think that I was. I just didn't really push for it because it is damaging. Like, I think it causes liver damage, too, and, you know, former alcoholic here. Last time I had a ultrasound on my liver, it was December of 2014, so months and months after I had stopped drinking, I had fatty liver disease, and I don't know if that's something that's rectified itself. I have no clue. And I was anorexic at the time, so everything was fucked. But I just know that I can't really mess around with stuff like that unless it was really, really dire. I would cut years off of my life to have clear skin. Are you kidding me? Like, that's such an easy choice for me. I would cut, like, a decade, 2 decades off if it meant, like, that I had, like, glowing, radiant skin. That's just, like, duh. Because the years that I would be here would be, I'd be able to walk around and not even have to think about what I look like. Because I have had many, many years where, like, I wouldn't look into mirrors because I felt like if I had no knowledge of what I looked like that day, that I could just act as though, I could just pretend that it was a nice face. I remember once when I was drunk, I was so tired of having my skin like that, and I broke a mirror, and I started, like, clawing at my face, you know, not enough to where it would, like, keloid scar, like, all the ones on my body, but just, I didn't know what else to do, and yeah, that little drunk poet in me was like, I'm gonna use a mirror, you know, like, as a symbol. Oh, people are having a fucking Super Bowl party in this neighborhood. It's driving me absolutely batty. I hate everybody. Everybody. Technically, the Super Bowl is tomorrow, but I feel like these festivities are just gonna keep going because they're grilling out, the music's loud. I know that there are gonna be Super Bowl parties all over the city. People are disappointing. That's what I've learned in this pandemic. And I'm just, like, jotting it down in my little notebook, like, who all to hate forever. Yeah, it matters that much to me. I'm sorry, but it's considerate and compassionate to care about your community and your neighbors, and people are not. They call us COVIDiots. Can you imagine? Like, somebody thinking that, like, believing in science is somehow idiotic when really the opposite is true. The irony. But anyway, that's about them, and I want to talk about me, like I have for the past 25 million minutes. I know that nobody watches these, but for me, it's like a psychiatric appointment. And so there you have it, another session with Sunny. Oh, go to hell.